Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I want to give you 3 examples of what you can expect from your trees in cold season. So 3 different trees in 3 different stages, and I would still say 3 quite common behaviors or patterns you can see in trees when it comes to cold season. So the season a tree most often goes dormant, and as we also see with a later tree might also struggle a little bit in this season. But I want to start with actually what I would call the best potential outcome you can have from a tree in cold season. And for that I want to show you this tree right here already in front of us, which is a Ficus microcarpa ginseng. I have repotted this in early spring of this year. I potted it again in the same pot it used to be before. I just switched out the soil because I simply wasn't quite happy with the mixture I had used before. It was organic soil, it didn't seem to really help the tree, it was a very slow grower at that point, and since I have repotted it, I definitely saw a lot of new growth on this tree. And also right now in cold season, I can still see a lot of new growth coming in here from this tree. And especially, let me find it here on this branch that before hasn't really started to ramify. It's now finally starting to branch out here a little bit more with new growth. And this is also the area that for the last couple of days and weeks has been facing the window. But I can see a lot of new growth tips coming also, for example, back here. So in general, the tree still has a lot of energy in it, and that is sometimes the case with your trees in cold season, that they don't stop to grow, even though normally it is the season in which they go into more or less a dormancy when you keep them indoors. But you will have trees in your collection that still continue to grow, like for example this one. So how do you deal with a tree then like this if it continues to grow? What you should of course still do is fertilize it at that point. You can see that this tree is still using its energy to produce new foliage, and for that of course it needs nutrients. So continue to feed your tree also then during cold season. Probably tone it down a little bit. I have noticed that the growth has slowed down a bit again with this one now in cold season in comparison to this summer, basically after I have repotted it. But nevertheless, there is growth, so make sure to continue to fertilize it. Maybe give it liquid fertilizer once a month. I have actually soil in here that has been pre-fertilized, so this should still be good to go for at least the rest of cold season. Then when the spring is around the corner, we'll start to again fertilize with liquid fertilizer then as well. And of course, what you also should always do with all your trees in cold season, just have a close look at them. How are they in general doing? As I said, this one is doing very well. It shows a lot of new growth, good health potential I can see in this tree. But of course, as we will see later on, this is not always the case. And then it is even more so important to keep a close look at your trees and see if there is something you need to adapt in your taking care of them to bring them through the cold season in a healthy way, so they are set up in the best way then for the next growth spurt that they hopefully will help them when spring is around the corner. So this is, as I said, the best potential outcome in my opinion, I would say, for a tree. Let's move on to a more common way that your trees might look during this season. And this actually brings me to this Ficus benjamina, one of the oldest trees in my collection that I have created from nursery stock. So definitely one of the trees I really like in my collection. Just a lot of sentimental value with this guy at this point. It is stable, I would say, and that is often the case for your trees. It is, I would say, dormant. So I haven't seen a lot of new growth or any new growth for a couple of weeks now. And you get, as you probably can also spot on the tree, the one or the other dying leaf. It's especially older leaves that are normally affected by this. And I can see here, for example, very close to the trunk, I have those leaves now on here that are dying back a little bit. Of course, dying leaves can be the sign of something being wrong with your trees. However, in cold season, one or the other yellowing leaf is normally not a problem. It's simply quite common on your trees to get rid of the old leaves also. And as you can see, it is really the older ones dying back here. So of course, when you see that, you can go in and see if they already detach themselves from the tree. So you simply clean them out. I can see here one that is starting to yellow, but it's still holding on. But I think these ones here we can also already pick off the tree. So let me turn this around. Also get the last one. And yes, other than that, this tree, as I said, doesn't really show any new growth at the moment. It still has a lot of new growth, of course, from the last growth season on it. I made sure not to prune it too close to it going into dormancy because of course we want to have a lot of foliage and a lot of healthy new foliage on this tree when it is then going into dormancy. And I think I found a good spot for this, especially now in this cold season. Once again, we look at the tree, I can see, of course, I still have wire on it. This will also stay on for the rest of the cold season. As we don't have a lot of growth, as I mentioned, normally this wire will not start to bite right away because the tree itself, of course, as it is in a more or less dormant state right now, it doesn't grow, and so also the branches here are not really growing thicker, but it helps us, of course, still keeping on this wire to stabilize the branches in the layer or in the sort that we wanted them to actually stabilize in. Other than that, of course, working on a tree like this, I would not recommend. It is dormant right now. So if I would, for example, now repot it, probably it would still work. I mean, it is more or less dormant. There is very, very slight growth, I probably would say up here, but it would be definitely more of a shock to this tree than if I do it if this tree is full of energy, is ready to go into another growth spurt, for example, by the end of winter, then when spring is around the corner. Probably better for this tree, even throughout summer, as I keep this indoors, normally also over summer, it wouldn't be a problem. I even would have repotted this a couple of weeks ago, but as I can see now, some yellowing leaves and not really a lot of other growth, I simply would not risk it at the moment, even though the tree normally would bounce back from it probably, but it would be an additional stress on this tree that we don't need at the moment. So this is definitely, I would say, the state you see most often on your indoor bonsai in cold season when you don't keep them in a growth tent or on a growth light. So this is just standing on a windowsill basically. So that is, in my opinion, the one you would see the most often. Let's now switch to a tree still that is, well, a negative example definitely, because of course your trees might also really struggle during cold season. So let me show you that. And that brings me to another ficus tree, in this case a tiger bark ficus that is really going through a lot right now. You can see that, of course, right away when you look at it. You can see not many leaves on this tree left. And this has been an ongoing pattern with this tree now since actually already starting a little bit before the cold season started, or really at the brink of cold season. And I think looking closer at this tree, it is definitely not only that it's not in the right location or anything. I think what we also have here a little bit is a sort of a pest problem, because what I can see is that old leaves are dying back and new ones are coming out. So there is still energy in the tree. The tree is willing to produce new leaves. However, something is causing this tree to lose leaves that have been older and already longer on this tree. You can see it here at the older branch, for example, where almost all of them have died back. And further up then I can still see at the tips of the branches new leaves starting to form, some even back budding going on in other parts of this tree. For example, up here I can see it right now, but then again leaves falling. And that already has caused me to take action, of course, with this tree. I'm not showing you this right now when I already think still there is pests on it. I've started to treat it. I normally use combination of water with dishwashing soap, simply like a drop of dishwashing soap in a spray bottle with water. And I keep spraying this every couple of days, really spraying it very, very generously, letting it soak in a little bit and then making also sure to rinse it off again. So just when it is time to water this tree, I also do this treatment. And since then it definitely has stabilized more, I can see that. So not that many leaves, as you can see right now, that are really turning and falling off. There are some older leaves that also seem to have survived, which is good, and of course new leaves still on here. But I think, as I saw on some of the older leaves, it was a problem with scale, and I think we have it under control now. Of course, I also quarantined this tree away from all my other ones, because the ones around it have not seemed to be affected. I just made sure also to treat them just in case there is also some infestation going on them, but it seems it was really only this one that was affected. And I think the problem was here specifically this tree, as I said, was already sort of sickly when cold season started. And of course, then the change in seasons is additional stress on this tree. And that makes it, of course, then simply more susceptible to also, harbor pests. So, of course, again, here it is then very important, as I said, keep an eye on your trees also in cold season. Even though there might not be as much work to do on your trees, make sure you keep a good eye on them and observe how they are doing in cold season. Then you catch something like this and can treat it I probably could have caught it a little bit earlier. I thought simply, as it started already before cold season, it's maybe just the tree itself, the health bit deteriorating or not settling into the pot, because I also repotted this, if I'm not wrong, this year. And I thought it just needs more time. Maybe I root pruned it too much, so it just doesn't have the energy at the moment. But when I really started to see leaves, and especially a lot of the older leaves starting to fall, while still new ones kept forming, that was my, yes, that was a giveaway, I would say, that there is some other problem with this tree when it comes maybe to also pests that we have to deal with. So that is, of course, also something that can happen to your trees in cold season. That in general, the health simply deteriorates. It's often also because the environment doesn't fit for the tree the best way in cold season. And then they are susceptible to even further deteriorate. So trying to keep an eye on it and also to keep ahead of that, of course, can then save a tree. And I think I turned it around in time for this tree. I will keep an eye on it, see if this new growth stabilizes now, if there is any other growth that is still affected and falling off. And then hopefully soon I will be able to again show this tree in a nicer way with a thicker foliage and nicer foliage up here, and keep you updated, of course, hopefully on this tree then as well. And I think it's not too late yet for this tree. So hopefully I will be able to show you this one again in another video soon in spring, when you can see it again with better health. But that brings me already to the end of the video. So I hope you enjoyed these 3 very specific and very different trees that I showed you today. They all definitely are at different stages in cold season, but I think it gives you just a good picture of what you can expect from your indoor bonsai in cold season. Some go through it almost unfazed with a lot of new growth. The other ones go somewhat dormant but still hang on to their health, and other ones might deteriorate. And then you, of course, really need to get active with those trees and focus your energy a lot on these trees then. So if you have any questions about this topic, of course, feel free to leave it in the comments. I will get to answer them as soon as I see them. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like. And if you enjoy my channel, of course, feel free to subscribe to it. Hopefully I will see you in the next video then. Until then, take care.